Okay,
Okay,
so
good.
we are going to get started. I'm going to put this one in answer because I'm not sure that you answer live. Answer.
Thanks, Tammy.
So I'm going to
That
go
part was
ahead.
easier when you were gone, I have to say.
Oh, well, yeah.
That's the only
Um,
part that was.
My
Go ahead.
partner of 7 years is a sex, love, and porn addict. We were living together when I first made my first discovery in May of 2020, and I finally realized he's an addict in December of 2020 after more discoveries and voluntary disclosures. Given the duration, depth, and breadth of his addiction, I asked him to move out to keep me safe, which he did, and we're no longer having any sexual contact. He admits he has an addiction to porn and agreed to seek treatment, and up to this point has attended 2 regular therapy appointments, read about 20 pages of podcast. I'm frustrated. Yes, I'm frustrated at the lack of progress and wondering what to do next. I've been educating myself and getting help from a CSAT and joined a betrayal partners group. Aside from his addiction and the havoc it wreaks, we are happy as a couple and want to stay together. From a pro-dependent perspective, will you please provide some healthy examples of what additional boundaries I should consider putting in place?
Okay, so let me quickly explain codependence really quickly. Codependence is about the partner. It's about if you need to detach for yourself and take care of yourself, that's what you need to do. And if you need to stay close and really help and be supportive for yourself in the situation, that's what you need to do. But nobody says no one says, and I wrote it in Prodependence, you have to stick by someone's side no matter what. I mean, if they hit you or they're violating your beliefs and they refuse to respond to you, I wouldn't be hanging around. I think it's out of your love for them and yourself that you say, I can't do this. But that's very different. Prodependence, a book I wrote to counter codependency, simply says that you're there because you love them. And you might need to move away from them, but it's not because there's something wrong with you and you won't grow until you detach. It's more about, I need to move away from this situation because it's so damaging to me in the present, or because this person is not being helped by my being around. They're just, whatever that is. So first, it really is, codependence is about supporting the partner into all of your choices are good ones because you love this person and you want the best from it. There's nothing wrong with you, but you haven't victimized and harmed by the situation. And you need to do whatever it is to take care of yourself. As opposed, again, codependency is more like you'll never grow while you stay close to this person. I think you can grow either way, but you got to keep yourself safe. And I wanted to preface that question by saying that because what I'm hearing here, Tammy, is this person kind of saying, well, if I come from a perspective of love and connection and, why would I do anything stronger? Or how can I set a boundary from that perspective? And a couple of things I think are in there. I'm sorry to delay this. It's a very long question. So first of all, frustrated with this lack of progress. I would be too. I think there's a lot of partners who are frustrated because in the beginning, many addicts will give lip service. It's like, well, I'll do this meeting, I'll go to a couple of therapy sessions, I'll read this book, and maybe that'll shut her up or get me back in where I want to get into, or impress her or him in some way. So just because someone agrees to it, that they're seeking some kind of treatment and have attended to a couple of meetings. Oh, by the way, they had that book, Sex Addiction 101, that I wrote. I think it's over 200 pages. So I don't think he's gotten very far considering this happened in December. So I'm sorry, I am feeling a sense of frustration because I feel like you are tolerating things that are not good for you. No matter how much you love someone, you don't want to be around when they're hurting you. And I have to say something else, and I really mean this with all love and respect. You say, we are, aside from this, basically, we're happy as a couple and we want to stay together. Well, I want you to stay together too. All the work that Tammy and I do, I think, is with a strong belief that people who have underlying solid relationships aside from this, we want you to work them out. But if you can, but that doesn't mean that, what did I want to say here? Let me see it. That doesn't mean you're, how do I say this? I talked to a couple recently, is the best way I can say it. And they said, oh my God, our relationship is so happy. We enjoy ourselves so much. It's just that he's seen, 40 sex workers and, seen all these affairs and went to strip clubs. Other than that, when I didn't know about that, we had a great relationship. It's just not true because this person you love was not fully there in your relationship. They took their anger, their frustration, their unhappiness, and they took it to other people. They took their needfulness for attention and validation, and they let you get the superficial, and they went over here for the distraction. So I don't think, all due respect, I don't think all the love you talk about could be there because I think you're too close to see this person. And ultimately, we want to see the people that we love as better than they are. but it sounds like your partner is a little more troubled than you'd like to see him. And I would also like to suggest that um, happiness is not experienced when there's not a lack of integrity. The reason that we named our treatment program Seeking Integrity is I believe that couples and individuals can only be happy when all the cards are on the table and you're seeing the whole person as they are. So maybe you saw the happy, fun partner that you experienced, but you didn't experience the whole person. And so, I'll say this again, one more thing. I've worked with a lot of couples. How do I say this? Here's something they say about therapy. Sometimes it feels worse before it gets better. Therapy will bring up things that make you feel bad, and you leave some days and you're like, oh my God, why did I go? But over time, it helps you put together pieces that will help you grow, for sure. And so what I would say is for couples who are feeling like, oh, we love each other and everything's great, except 2 months ago, I found out this person's ruined my life. I would say that you might need to question the way that you look at happiness and connection for the two of you. It may well be that some things are lacking, and maybe because you're so close together, you can't see it. Tami, you're nodding your head, so I know you're in the
I
groove with
am.
me.
Well, I was like, oh, this feels so compartmentalized on both sides, quite frankly. So like, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you set the healthy boundary for he moved out. But yeah, his lack of progress, 90 days during COVID, I'm sorry, what else are you going to do? You're going to engage in recovery with as much energy as you engaged in the acting out. And Dr. Robbins, and Sex Addiction 101 is not a hard read. It's not like War and Peace. This is 200 pages, but it's not that difficult. We even have a class he could have completed twice. He could have completed, the January or February level 1 sex and porn addiction 101 course. We have one starting April 7th. But those are online, 60 minutes every week or 90 minutes every week, 6 weeks to guide through, have a facilitator walk through the sex addiction 101 workbook. It's not that hard, and 2 therapy appointments in 3 months. I mean, like if he had 2 therapy appointments a week, that would be like maybe, but yeah, what I hear is, so let's go back to her specific question is, what additional boundaries should I consider putting into place? So that's a great question.
I know what I would do. I would say until I see the kind of progress that makes me feel safe, not that you need to do for you, but that makes me feel safe, I don't want to talk to you outside of therapy. Or I don't want you to text me or email me. If I feel like reaching out to you, I will. Some people need to change the locks. Really, I will tell you, and I think we have 5 guys in treatment right now at the center, Tami, and I think all of them are married, and every one of them would have come in and said, I'm here to save my relationship. So trust me. And even if one wasn't married, they'd be there because they want to save a relationship with their workers. It's all about our relationships that we want to protect and take care of in the end. And so the threat of the loss of your happy relationship should motivate this person to want to get better. Now, I have to say, and I'll just say to you honestly, you've been apart for 1.5 years, or what is it? How long? December 2020 wasn't that long ago. So how long have they been not living together? God, there's 16 questions. So we have to finish one, but it's a good one.
I know. So they've not been living together since December.
Okay, so that's only a couple of months. So, I mean, first of all, this is just the beginning of a process, but the less progress I see, the less engaged I would be. Ooh, I like that. The less progress you see, the less engaged you should be, because progress is what makes you feel safe and makes you feel safe around your family. It's really not up to this person to decide what choices you make for yourself. There.
Okay. So
19 to go.
Yes. Okay. So next is porn and sex addiction always a progressive illness if the addict doesn't get help? I know everyone is different, but are there stages that the progression generally happens? My porn addicted, sex addicted ended our marriage last March. We've been separated. He told me he would wait to file divorce until our daughter graduated college this May. Instead, he blindsided me today with divorce papers as I was walking out the door to pick up our daughter from college. His father passed away a month ago and he seems to be getting worse. I'm shocked that he didn't even seem to think about dropping off the papers right before I was getting our daughter. Oh.
So Tami, I want to remind you of something that happened to us today, you and me. You and I had an email from someone who's writing about her 72-year-old dad who was compulsively viewing porn. And I don't think there's any stage at which people are too late to the table. But the other reason I said that is because I've seen people who had a problem in their 50s and it escalated so badly in their 70s that they came to treatment because they still wanted to be with their grandkids. Does everyone escalate? Yes, but in different ways. Some people escalate to something happening more often. Some people escalate to having less and less time and focus on their lives and more being upset with themselves and also doing that. Some people escalate by looking at deeper and deeper and more problematic behavior. First they look at vanilla porn and then they look at more, and before they know it, they're into things that they didn't expect. So I do think the more you're active in that lifestyle, the more likely it is that either you're going to end up further along than you thought, or you're going to run into someone who's going to drag you into the pit. And just to say it, I don't know your spouse at all or your life circumstances, but I know a lot of people who started out seeing sex workers and ended up as drug addicts because and guys in their 50s, try a little of this, try a little of that. Oh, honey, I really love you. And before you know it, they're doing a lot of drugs. And those are the guys we see at times, those 50-year-olds who come in doing drugs and struggling with sex. So anyway, I would trust your concerns. Oh, and one more thing, this guy's crazy. Like, no offense, but why are you even worrying about him when he gave you divorce papers as you were going to your daughter's? I mean, the whole thing is just, I don't want to use the bad language that I thought of, some kind of show. But okay, one more thing. You said his father passed away a month ago and he seems to be getting worse. And my response to it is, what do you care? I understand you might have deep and longing connection from the past, but this person is on a self-destructive path and they don't seem to have any regard for you, your feelings, or their child. So, and in fact, I'll tell you one more thing and you won't want to hear it. I have a feeling that this person's already moved on to someone else. You're getting these divorce papers for a reason. He said he would do it later, but all of a sudden he wants to do it now. And May is a while from now. So I'm thinking, no offense, but I know my clients. He's found somebody. That person has said, well, why are you still married or whatever? And he's decided to push it forward. So, yeah, that's my response. I don't know, Tammy, do you have something else?
No, give your daughter a hug. You've got the daughter. That's what I was thinking. So, okay. I am a spouse and am confused about which version of my essay is the true self we married before his addiction took over. Did I marry the mask, the false self? Then when the addiction took over, he turned into his real self when the mask fell away, meaning he is essentially a bad person. Oh, I hate when people say addicts are bad people. So I'm gonna point that out. It's like, I don't think we're bad people. I think we're broken people. But having good and bad and moralistic, I really struggled with that. So I'm gonna invite you to look at it as, wow, somebody's really, like we were talking about, has progressive disease. So, is somebody with cancer a bad person? Do we choose poorly? Absolutely. Do we hurt lots of people? Absolutely. But we can do it differently. So I'll shut up. What do you think, Dr. Rob?
No, I agree, Tammy, and I don't take it personally, but you and I are both addicts. And I know that with a lot of support and the right direction, we have grown to be better people. But that doesn't mean we weren't good people who were doing bad things. You have to understand, every person I work with has trauma. Every person I work with has profound abuse. Every man I work with was neglected. All of us, including myself, had a shit show as a childhood. There, I said that word. It made me say it all the time. So from my perspective, because this isn't someone who hurt me, this is a very broken person who has missed out on life because they're escaping into something over here and they're missing the most important thing in life, which is home and family and connection. So what is he doing? He is actually running away from the thing that would bring him the most help, support, and love and stability. That's not bad. That's crazy. So I often say to I won't say this to you, but our clients, I'm not a client right now, but trust me, we have issues. And I'll say this, I cannot treat a bad person. I cannot turn a bad person into a good person. I have no magic wand. This is not Harry Potter, and I can't do that. But I can turn a broken person into someone who is stronger and more self-aware and more available. So I think we both have strong feelings about that, because you can't grow from being a bad person. I'm sorry. Bad people go to prison. Broken people get help and get better. Now, you may not want to love this person in this situation, and I could understand that, but someone else will. Some of us like broken people that are already on the road to recovery. Okay, the other thing I want to say about, there's so many questions in these questions, Tammy. I don't think I am did I drink too much coffee? I feel like I'm going.
Just keep going. You're doing great.
Okay, at least I remember things. So the other thing I want to tell you is, I think what hurts the spouses that have been through this for a while is, I thought I knew him. I thought I knew, or her. I thought I knew all about them. I thought when we got together, we would tell each other endless stories about everything. I mean, I knew they wouldn't hide anything from me. And when we met with the premarital counseling, and they said, "Is there anything you want to share with each other?" You know, I knew we would have said it, but understand, there's a whole part of this person you don't know. Almost all the guys I work with, and some of the women, knew, profoundly knew, that there was something not right about intimacy, relationships, connection. Any guy at Seeking Integrity will tell you with a little bit of shove that he knew he had issues long before he met his partner on some level. I think I knew when I was 12, really, on some level. So, what was I going to say? And I see I did lose my memory. Hold on a second. Okay, so I think there's always been a mask. And what I would tell you is many of the men I work with deliberately hide things about themselves that we don't want you to see because we're afraid you won't marry us. And we're afraid you won't want to live with us. And we're afraid you will leave us. And we love you. So we just leave parts out. And I think this is one of the most painful things of the spouse is, especially, you know, well, under many circumstances, is two things. One is, if I'd known about this, I would have helped you. We could have worked on this together. Had you let me know 20 years ago, you know. And the other thing is, how dare you ask me to marry you and live with me all those years without telling me who you really are? And how come I didn't have a choice about who I married because you left this whole part out? So a little of this, a little of that, but number one, we're not bad. And number two, part of us is masked our whole lives until we get well.
And it isn't just sex addiction. It doesn't matter which form of addiction, we're all masks. I mean, like that is, it helps us compartmentalize and not have to show you the real us. So,
or ourselves.
Really true. Okay. This one I'm not sure about. Can you comment on the horrible event that took place? Okay. That took place in Atlanta last week, and the person in custody stating he's a sex addict and was taking care of temptation.
So I just want to say, I spoke to the Washington Post about these. I've been called about the Wall Street Journal. We're writing blogs and podcasts. So Tami, how far do you want me to go? Because I know we have a lot of people. Do you want the quick version of this? You tell me.
Take a few minutes. So, yeah.
Okay. So if I said, and I see no difference in this way of thinking, you know, I've been an alcoholic for a while and I hate my alcoholism. So I went to a bar and I shot up everybody there. That's exactly what happened here. I have a gambling problem and I went to the casino and I shot all the casino cat. That's a very primitive way of thinking, which deeply disturbed, mentally ill people suffer from. Sex addicts are not deeply mentally ill. We have extreme and profound trauma in early life that we are acting out in adult life. And addicts do lots of things to hurt people, but we rarely hit people. We will rage, but we're not, some of us are, but most of us are not openly aggressive. And second of all, just because I drink, I don't kill people. Just because I compulsively gamble, I don't kill people. If the man is a sex addict, which may well be true, he's also crazy. He's also psychotic. He's also schizophrenic. And by the way, early 20s in men is when you start to see mania and bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. So I would imagine this man was having a psychotic break. He was not seeing reality clearly. And this is what happens in these cases. People like this hate themselves for their sexual behavior. They hate what they're doing, as many of us do. And in this case, this man had a very strong religious background. So that gave him more reasons to hate himself. And he was crazy. So sometimes people who are really troubled will say, it isn't my fault, it's theirs. And that's a way to feel better. I'll give you a simple example. I worked with a client a number of years ago. He was out at a store and he was trying really hard to recovery. And he came into our group therapy like an hour after he went shopping. And he said, I'm so angry. Why are you angry? Because there was this woman at the store and she was wearing such a short skirt and a halter. How could she dress like that when I'm trying so hard to recover? It's that kind of thinking. It's that I don't want to look at myself for how troubled and unhappy I am. So if I'm also mentally ill, it's easy to say, oh, if I just got rid of all those sex workers, I wouldn't have a problem anymore, rather than I am the source of the problem because someone who's that troubled would not be able to tolerate that. And I'll say one thing more. Well, I won't say that. Never mind. I'll leave it to the newspapers. But I deeply feel that my entire experience in 35 years working with these issues and 25 years of being licensed at any clinician I've ever spoken to, ever, tells me that this man had a much more profound problem than an addiction. And by the way, if someone comes into a treatment center with gambling or sex or alcohol, whatever it is, and they are schizophrenic and they are bipolar and they have a major mental health disorder, we have to deal with that first. they're not thinking clearly, they're not present, they're going to do all kinds of crazy things because they're crazy. And once we stabilize crazy, like really crazy, then we can get into the day by day, moment by moment crazy that defines addiction. How was that?
I'm
Excellent.
going to leave it at there. So, okay.
Absolutely.
The next question. I'm a 42-year-old single gay man. In your Sex Addiction 101 book, you address sexual arousal template. As I wrote down my sexual history, I see a pattern of finding people who want to hurt me physically or give me STDs. Is this permanently in my sexual arousal template? Can it be changed?
Okay, well, first of all, I wrote a book for you, and that book is called Cruise Control. Maybe if Tami wouldn't mind dropping it in there. It's called Cruise Control, Understanding Sex Addiction in Gay Men. It was my second book. It was revised just a few years ago because of meth and marriage and apps. I had to revise it. But in any case, I wrote a book about being a gay man who's trying to achieve sexual recovery in gay culture. Because if you're in gay male culture, it's very much trying to get sober around sex is like trying to get sober around alcohol if you work in a bar. You know, everyone's drinking, everyone looks fine. So in the gay world, lots of people are having sex in ways they wouldn't in the straight world, and that's fine with everyone, except if you have a problem. And then it's hard to know what is a problem and what is what everybody's doing. So that wasn't your question, but I want to say that is why I wrote Cruise Control. And I get 12 cents for every book that I wrote. Publishers get the rest. So I ain't making a lot of money if you buy a book, but this will really help you. The other piece that you actually ask about. So I would just say this. It's funny. I used to say to myself, I don't know if I'm depressed and that makes me sexually act out, or am I sexually acting out and then it makes me depressed? I spent years thinking about that without doing anything about it, by the way. It was a wonderful question that didn't solve any problems. So, we could say that you hate yourself so much about what you're doing and the places you're doing it, that you don't give a shit about yourself and you don't care what people do to you. I know lots of people, they feel so insecure or so badly about themselves, and then what they're doing reinforces it. Or maybe that they're single at 42 and haven't found someone. They feel so awful that they engage in sexual behavior that reflects how they feel about themselves on some level. There are other people who grow up with, as you said, arousal templates that might involve pain or humiliation, and I would say to you that we do not discriminate against fetish. And I don't think that a fetish like BDSM has anything to do with an addiction. I think it's a separate issue, but I do think you have to stop the addiction in order to be able to figure that out. When I stop running to dark places for sex, and I give myself some time out and I get support, or I come to treatment at Seeking Integrity, whatever works for you. Gay leadership tends to help with gay issues. Although I say 95% of people come are straight because 95% of the world is straight. But in any case, that's a separate issue. The answer is you will not be able to know, but a lot of people do enjoy some form of humiliation as a part of sex, but that doesn't mean they're seeing 100 people, they're getting STDs. So your interest in, let's say, humiliation as a form of arousal is very different than running out and having sex with 100 people and getting STDs. If you start to separate those issues, first work on the thing that's most harmful, which is I'm getting STDs and I could get a disease or I could get arrested, whatever that is. And then we can take a step back when all that craziness is gone to say, gee, I wonder why that part of sex interests me. Right now, I think it's too soon to have an answer.
Okay. Next question. I'm doing all the work, been clean for 3.5 months, and I'm being honest about my whereabouts constantly, going to 3 support meetings a month in a 12-step group, doing my steps, have a sponsor, keeping in touch with several guys on the boards, seeing a therapist, doing disclosure and timeline, going through said timeline in April, my therapist with her. I don't see a question in there.
There's no question in there. Although
okay.
I would have to say, just to say it, Tami, that if the question I expected was, why hasn't my girlfriend, wife, boyfriend, whatever, realized how hard I'm working and really supported me? And, I've done all these things. That would be my expectation for this question. But tell you what, maybe, I don't think we can answer this. Your initials are CE. So if we see CE come up in the, there's more?
So there's more. Didn't see how to change my name, LOL, doing all the work yet. So this is from a male, yet she still doesn't think I'm doing enough, just yet.
Right.
Watching podcasts and groups we read together. How do I convince her I'm doing the work and being honest?
Tami, am I a swami when I say I knew what the rest of that question was?
There you go.
Is it the question that every man asks when he's 3.5 months sober or whatever?
And I'm going to 3 support meetings a month is like, I mean, I was going
to. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going, and I'm sorry, but back in the olden days when there were less meetings, I was going to 10 meetings a week, you know,
And you had to get in your
every week.
car.
You had to get in your car and go, and like, you know what, I had time because I wasn't doing all the other things I was doing. So to me, 3 support meetings a month in a 12-step group, doing my steps, that's good, and working with a sponsor, that's great. Read out of the doghouse. That's how you like that, like those are how you are never going to, if your lips are moving, you're never going to be able to convince her. It's your actions, actions, actions. Actions speak louder than words. You know, what you do, you know, have a chart up on the fridge of here's where I'm going, here's what I'm doing. And there, I would hope, would be multiple things every day of what you're doing in your recovery work. If you have not joined the Sex Addiction 101 work group yet, again, it starts April 7th. It's online, 6 weeks, 90 minutes a session. It's constructed to, I mean, it's facilitated, moderated, you know, going through the workbook. It's really helpful. So just, it's what you do, not anything. You are not going to be able to convince her. It's going to take her time because you've lied for however long. So it's going to be like, okay, you're showing up, you're actually doing the things that you say to do. But I'd up it more on the meetings, and I'm glad you're here. Hopefully you both are.
And I would add something to that, which is something that I say to every man and woman who's 3 months into recovery, who's in a relationship. I think you're a little clueless about the harm you
3 support
caused.
meetings a week. That's actually better. Thank you.
Okay,
So
let me just, sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry.
I don't care. No, it's okay. No offense. That's better. But I don't care if you're going to 30 12-step meetings a week and doing absolutely fabulously. It will never touch anyone appropriately, anyone that shouldn't again. The issue is your impatience with your partner's process. The reason I wrote Out of the Doghouse was because I'd spent 19 years working with men who had betrayed women. And guys, we don't get it. We're like flowers, candy. It's been a few months. Why aren't you over it? I'm tired of seeing that angry face. Look at all I'm doing. And that ain't it. We have for a long time convinced our partners that what we said was true. We made them believe things that weren't true. We, blew up their minds. I mean, on so many levels. And now we expect them to somehow believe that we're getting better. If you listen to one of my lectures or you read the book, and again, I'm not trying to sell books. This is what I do. I wrote the only book for men to understand what they do to women when they betray them. I don't think there's another one that could be more clearly laid out. I wrote the only book on gay men and sex addiction. I'm not trying to toot my horn. It's just that that's a reality. So when I recommend the stuff I've written, it's because I've done the work, I understand the work, and I've put it out there. The reason Tami mentioned Out of the Doghouse is because it speaks more to realistic expectations of someone you've hurt. Men think of betrayal in a very different way than women do. And it takes us a lot longer to figure out what the problem is. If it was flowers and candy and jewelry and taking you on vacation to make you feel better, it would be much easier. And you might be able to do that if you, lost your job and you're feeling terrible, or your spouse lost their job and you're feeling terrible, give them flowers and take them on a vacation, make them feel better. But this is about, as Tami said, a change in attitude, a change in behavior. And there is nothing you can do to reassure your partner. What you can do is work on yourself. As Tami said, let them know what you're doing so they feel like, okay, I can rely on something. Oh, by the way, you better not have any more secrets. You better not be once in a while acting out, because as you continue the behavior, if you expect your partner to ever get better, if they find out anything else, anything, and if you're lying, they will find it, then they'll never be able to forgive you, because every partner who's been lied to multiple times thinks, oh, this is it, I can handle this. This is it, I can handle this. And by the third one, they're like, I can't handle this. They just looking for what is the foundation of the problem, and we don't give it to them. So another suggestion would be see a therapist who is engaged in this particular work, because they're going to help you find your way into the couples piece you need to do. And about 3 months in is a good time. And Tami, if you want, just write to Tami, T-A-M-I, at seekingrecovery.com. She will, as we do, always give you...
Seekingintegrity.com.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Seeking Recovery at Tami at seekingintegrity.com. We don't get cutbacks for our referrals, but we do know a lot of really good people. You say you're seeing a therapist. I wonder if you're seeing a therapist who understands betrayal, sexual violation, sex addiction, and what partners go through. Because if you're not seeing a specialist, and I'm not trying to sell people's practices, It's like having cancer and going to your general practitioner. They're going to want to help. They might give you something for the pain, but they're not going to understand exactly what it takes to help a couple get through this. That's what we do in treatment. That's what people do in the right kind of therapy. And I hope you're able to find it.
So I want to tell you that somebody today reached out and said that they'd supported you 24 cents because they bought 2 of your books. So
wait, what about the other penny?
no, you
Well, you
said
said it.
I made 12 cents
I
a
know,
book.
but I
So
want a
2
quarter.
times 20.
But I
Well,
want a
no,
quarter.
you'll have to wait for another. Just keep working on it.
Hey,
Okay.
but one more thing, and to you guys who want to write a book, 2 things I can always tell you. Number one, people say, if I only had time, I'd write a book. I'm waiting till I get some time. Forget it. You
Yeah.
will never write it,
Yeah.
ever, 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 because
Yeah.
you make time out of your life. And the other thing is, if you ever want to write a book, you just know that you will never make a penny off it. That your life, you devoted your life for a year to something that was important to you to get a message out. It doesn't mean you're going to make money from it. There, I'm done with my literary lecture.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tami.
Okay. I am a married man of many years and have only betrayed my wife with men and gay porn. How do you distinguish between sex addiction and sexual orientation, childhood trauma issues? I've wondered if my acting out in extramarital relationships is just my fulfillment of who I am versus addiction. That's a profound question.
Well, there's a lot there.
Hmm.
And I'm going to try to be very, very cautious. Number one, when I have guys in treatment and we look at this question, Mike, one of my questions is, how many women have you had sex with? How many men have you had sex with? If I've had sex with 50 women and 50 men, or I've had sex with, 15 or 10 meaningful relationships with women, or I've sexually acted out with women, then I would say, okay, so you do both. But if you've been with, 50, 70 men and only 2 or 3 women, I would say walks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's probably a duck. Does it mean you're gay? No, gay is the way you live. I am gay. I am married to a man. Everyone in my life knows it. You may be homosexual and in the closet, but that's very different than being out. Sexual orientation is defined before birth. All of the research, including my own experience, will tell you that we know by 7 or 8, most of us, that we're different. I remember looking at my elementary school gym teacher, and I was like, oh, Dom Pellegrini. He had this big black mustache. I'll never forget. But in any case, I mean, it was like a crush. It wasn't even sexual. I wasn't even old enough, but I had a crush on the male gym teacher. So I knew, and most of us know, if you look at the research, by 7 or 8. So I have very, very rarely seen a compulsion to be sexual with a man, by a man, simply come out of a fetish. I have seen some people who claim, and I really don't know, and I'm not sure what the research is, that since they were abused by people with penises, that they have some kind of odd attraction to penises. But generally, that's very specific. Like, they don't want to be with the man, they don't want to see the person, they don't want to talk to them. They're just have a focus on that. And but I think, again, this is stuff that is very complicated. This is why we run a treatment center. I'm just going to give a plug for this. I have men who are seeking integrity that come in all the time, and they have these questions. And, I can't definitively define what you are. There's a lot of testing that we've gone and their life experiences. But I think that we can get pretty down, and we do get pretty down to asking you the right questions for you to make your own decisions. And by the way, I would profoundly distinguish sex addiction from sexual orientation. And I'll tell my own story, if you don't mind. I was a raging sex addict. I mean, many people a week for a long, long time. And I ruined a relationship as a result of it, ruined it. And so I moved out to California, separated from this person, thinking, oh, okay, now that I'm single, now I will have more freedom. I'll date lots of people. I won't feel as much of a compulsion to be sexual with all those people, because now, I'm going to enjoy my life more. I'm not tied to this awful person, whatever it was. And I moved out to California, and all of a sudden I was acting out more because I didn't have any structure. I didn't have anyone to report to or come home to. And I was still interested in men. And why I say this to you is I did not realize until probably a year of being here by myself that the problem was not being gay or homosexual. The problem is I had conflated those issues and thought, well, when I'm an out gay man and when I'm living my life whatever way I want to, then I won't be compulsive anymore. And the truth is, I was both. I had a problem with sex addiction and I was a gay man. And it took a long time to figure out that the two were separate. It's like those of you who have fetishes or kink and you're into that and you think, oh, well, I hate myself because I'm into panties. And so that means, that must be sex addiction. No, your interest in panties is over here and sex addiction is over there. Now, you may have played out your interest over here in the addiction. In any case, I think it involves more information. I do consultations on questions like this. I'll tell you what, that Tami can organize. I'll tell you that what I spoke to a wife. I'll just give you this brief moment. I saw a couple actually online in consultation, and it's not therapy. I consult to try to clarify issues and tell people sort of the next steps. And I was talking to this couple that had been together 50 years. And his wife knew that he'd been doing this with men and that with men and this with men. And they'd been to 6 therapists, and all 6 therapists bought the line that, oh, it's trauma. Oh, you used to work on this, work on that, because he absolutely did not want to be homosexual. And I listened to them for an hour because I'm very direct and very clear. And I, as you, in case you haven't gotten that, and I turned to her and I said, well, I turned to him and I said, have you ever slept with anyone other than your wife? He said, well, maybe one other woman in college. And I said, how many men have you been sexual with? And he said, like 300. And I said, you're queer. I said to his wife, question answered, your husband's a homosexual. But my point of that is what she said to me, which is, I have been wanting to know the answer to that question for 50 years. And if someone had just told me, I could have lived with it. We could have had an open marriage. We could have worked out all kinds of things. But instead, I've gone from therapy to therapy to therapy, following him because he did not want to own what was true for him. Now, they've been married 60 years. They're not going to separate. But I can tell you the relief on her face when I just said, yes, blue is blue and green is green. And they line up to make, what do blue and green make? I don't know.
Blue
Brown.
Green?
Yeah,
No, blue green.
But my
Teal.
point is that sometimes my job is to just say, this is what this is, and then people can move. And yeah, it's a great question to ask. I think you need a professional who knows what they're doing, who's not going to go along with, oh, well, I only want to do it this and I only that. I mean, they will play into that with you and you'll be lost forever. So treatment is a good option for you. Asking for a referral is a good option for you. But this is a complex issue for sure.
Okay, next question. Is sexual addiction cycle? What kinds of tools can we use to avoid going from trigger to fantasy? How about fantasy to ritualization?
Okay, so we are going to be triggered. And what that means is I'm going to see a billboard. I'm going to walk through a certain part of town. I'm going to be online looking at something. And all of a sudden I feel like, I don't know why, and you don't have, I know why, but you don't have to know why. I feel like I want to go have sex with a sex worker, or all of a sudden I want to move into porn. So the trigger is of whatever it is, and you can't control the trigger. For an alcoholic, it might be walking by a bar. It might be seeing someone sip a glass of wine at that same time that they were always having a glass. I mean, you never know what your personal trigger is. So you cannot avoid going into fantasy. It's just going to happen. What you can do is say, okay, look at this. I'm thinking about sex workers. I'm thinking about, you have to be able to observe yourself enough to understand that your desire to have sex with strangers is not about sex. And this is something we all, so many people are like, I just like sex. I'm oversexed. I like a lot of sex. This is not about sex. This is about escape. So if you can get into your head, and this takes a lot of work, when you hear yourself saying, I really want to go see that sex worker, I really want to go call that ex, when you get triggered, what you need to do is call someone who you trust, who is healing, or a therapist or in a support group, and say, I think I'm in trouble because I'm thinking about this. And they will help you, because you yourself, as we say, we're powerless. I can't help myself in the moment. But if I'm connecting to another human being who is not in my own craziness, they can talk me out of it. And by the way, the real thing we want to act over, the real thing, I'll give it to you, is connection. We feel so disconnected from the people we're even supposed to be connected with. And when something comes up, we race to a quick escape. I'll give you one more answer to this. I'm so full of answers today. I made an agreement with my sponsor and I kept it. The person who I relied on in 12-step programs to be the person who was my guide and my role model. And they said, I do not want you to have sex unless you call me first. And that meant with my spouse, with myself, all of it. And I thought, do I want to embarrass myself by calling this person, or do I want to get well? And I decided to call them. And you know what? I had a lot of sobriety around that, because I was no longer alone with it. And I didn't, left to my own devices, I can give myself permission to do a whole bunch of things. But if I have to rely on someone else who is not crazy like I am to give me feedback and guide me, and I'm willing to take it, that's how I can find my way out. You can't escape the fantasy, but what do you do with it is the question.
Great answer. Okay, next question.
Hey, Tami, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Am I leaving you out? Because I'm
No, no,
giving all
no.
these long answers
No,
and I feel like I'm leaving you out.
I, I like, I just want to say, yay. That was a great answer. So,
Okay,
okay.
well, you have to
I'm
answer the
not
next
feel
one
no, no,
first.
no. I'm not feeling left out. We're all good. We're all good. So, okay.
Okay.
My essay wants to leave me, and he is in extreme denial about his addiction and issues. Does it mean that I am unhealthy if I still want to help nudge him to get help, therapy, conversations, etc.? I spent thousands of hours and dollars
Mm.
helping myself through the trauma and will never stop working on myself, but I feel scared for him and his future as well. Mm.
Well, I don't know about nudging. I'm not sure what nudging means. I think, well, actually, I'm going to stop. Full stop. Tammy, what are your thoughts about this question?
So what I hear is the person is not responding to the desire to get help. He's choosing to leave. You did
Or
not.
she?
Yes.
Or she?
Yes. He or
Hmm.
she. Yeah. The essay is choosing to leave. You did not.
Oh, he.
So
Sorry.
yeah. Yeah. So he is. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm so confused. Okay.
I'm sorry. I always like to make sure that women are included because we do see female sex
And it,
addicts. So I
yes, it could be
apologize.
either way. So
But this one
I
says he. So I'll shut
appreciate
up.
that you are being very careful with yourself, therapy, etc. And you've done a lot of work on yourself, and you don't want to stop doing work on yourself. But at some point, if the essay is leaving, that's like that's the that is what it is. So you can always hope good things. I have an ex-husband. I still hope good things happen for him. I'm really glad I'm not with him, but that's a whole other conversation. But I still hope good things for him. At some point, I just don't need the resentment and everything else. And you care. You clearly you've invested heavily in this person, so of course you care. And whether you're together or not, you still want them to be healthy. So, but at this point, I would look at it as just focus on you and how can you move through. You're going to grieve the loss of what you hoped for with him, what he could have been, all of those things. So get support around those issues for you as well. Glad you're here. So that's my thoughts.
And I want to support Tammy. And she said the most beautiful thing I have all here, which is, to me, the question is it unhealthy if I want to help them? And first of all, if you read the book, I hate to say this book I wrote called Prodependence, I think it's very healthy when you love someone to want them to be better. And I think it's very healthy to long for and hope for that you can rejoin the connection you once had. I think that's very healthy. And that's why I wrote that book. I don't think that you should pick yourself apart because you love a troubled person or you stayed with you love who you love, and that's fine. Um, and I really admire, as Tammy said, the fact that you spent so much time healing yourself. You wouldn't be able to see what this is between you and this person had you not. You could be pulled in for a long time with a lot of BS had you not really been able to see yourself so clearly. But I'll say one more thing. You have no idea why this person wants to leave you. I work with many men who have a girlfriend here and an affair over there, and the moment you start to bring up difficult things that they don't want to deal with, they're running into the arms of another person. So I wouldn't just assume it's denial. I would assume doing what I do for a living, because I don't trust any of the guys I work with unless they're in an active process of healing. I would just assume that this gave him an opportunity to push you away and make you feel bad. For if you hadn't said this to him, he could have stayed, right? If you hadn't pushed this agenda, things would be better. I'm not sure this is denial. I think this is a deliberate shove away from you, and he's going to pay the price for that. He's going to pay the price for that. So
But
anyway, that's my
hopefully you
response.
have an opportunity to heal and be in a relationship at some point, if you ever want one, with somebody who can be a true partner with you, side by side, against the world. So, okay, next question.
No, with the world. We're not against the world.
Not well, yeah, you're right with the world, but yeah, I always think of what Dr. Stan Tatkin talks about is like the two of us united, to deal like,
Shelter ourselves, right?
yeah, well, like think
Yeah.
about with COVID that, it's really helpful to have had somebody in the trenches together. So, okay.
Can I just say something briefly to you about that, Tammy? Because someone brought this up I saw a notice on, well, everything I think is hopefully germane, so I'm not trying to just tell stories. But I was looking, someone wrote something on Facebook, on a therapist Facebook list recently. And the question they asked all these therapists was, what did you learn from having all this time dealing with COVID? And, some people wrote, well, I learned to knit, or some people wrote, I learned to work on Zoom, or some people, and I wrote, because this is the best thing of all, I learned that I have a happy marriage.
Mhm.
because all of this time of being together, and now granted, we argue about why didn't you close the cabinet or why didn't you shove in the chair, because our world is very small. But you don't get through this kind of experience unless you deeply and are able to love each other, and or at least tolerate. So that was my big lesson this whole experience, was how wonderful my relationship really is. Anyway, I wanted to say that, Tammy, just because it
No,
makes me feel good.
no, and that's really important. And what I hear in that is gratitude. And I've shared on webinars before, I've had to lean into the very things I learned early in recovery. And one of them was making a gratitude list every day. And I've had to be grateful and remember I have choices, even if they're smaller. But yeah, and the people around me that I'm connected to in even a Zoom way are the meaningful parts of it. So, okay, next question. Would an ongoing mother-son enmeshment impact the recovery of a sex addict? Yes. He has been sober from alcohol and substances for about 3 years, but just in case he relapses, there is an agreement for her to manage his finances.
Uh, I'm not sure about the second question. I'm sure I understand it, but why don't we talk about the first one first? Why don't you go ahead,
Yes.
Tam? I know you have a lot of understanding of this. Why don't you
I
speak to that?
do. So Dr. Ken Adams did a podcast with Dr. Rob on the Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast series, which you can find on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. But and it talks about overcoming enmeshment when he's married to mom, Silently Seduced. Both of those are Dr. Ken Adams books, and it is the #1 podcast on that entire series. So there's lots of people that have struggled with that. But yeah, it's, oops, you took away my, you
I'm
took
sorry,
away
go
the
to
question.
answer it. I
No,
answered their question. I wrote them a note.
that's fine. So, but many people, Dr. Ken Adams does some weekend intensives for people that kind of get stuck in that spot where it's a betrayal if they disentangle from a parent. And so then they keep relapsing, because it's just like Dr. Rob was talking about, like those relationship issues, those are the uncomfortable, unpleasant things. And when there's so much demanded by a demanding parent, then anything else is a betrayal to that relationship. So it can be very difficult, but getting some tools to use and understanding that it can be different and setting boundaries, has been transformative for many, many people. So that's okay. Anything on that?
Well, just that almost every man that I work with has had some form of either neglect, by profound neglect, or, as Tammy said, kind of enmeshment. And here's the message that we give when we're like that, because for me, and for a lot of the men I work with, I'll take it either way. To move towards someone who might abandon me is terrifying, because I grew up being neglected and abandoned. That's at one end of the spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum is, and this is my experience, my mom was so overwhelming. Her needs were so huge. She was so troubled that I always came second. And therefore, she would ask me, what do you think of your dad? I don't like having sex with your dad. How do you like these panties that I'm wearing? I mean, there was no overt incest, but there was on every level being pulled into her world like I was some kind of girlfriend or whatever. And what that meant is I learned that everyone else comes first and I come second. I just need to figure out what they need in order to be what I need. But we grow up with big emptiness inside. So yeah, absolutely. Dr. Ken Adams' work is the work here, and he does workshops in Michigan, I think, and maybe online now too.
Online now. He actually successfully translated some to online. So yeah, check it out. Overcomingenmeshment.com is his website. So okay, next question. This is a great question from somebody early in recovery. Do you find that when you are in withdrawal, you can feel very irritable and crabby and angry?
No.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes.
No.
Of course, everything that has been taken away, so to speak. So, and you're supposed to choose differently, and you have no tools to be able to use it to deal with all those uncomfortable things that you're looking to use it, the reasons you were using in the first place. So of course, it's overwhelming, and I hear you. And so, yeah, yes, just know that that's normal. And, people say, oh, you can only withdraw from chemicals. That's not true. It's like, yeah, it really is. It's dopamine. Dr. David, go online on Wednesday night. He talks about dopamine and all that. And if you're trying to simmer all that stuff down, it's, there's a drop. So other thoughts?
And I want to just tack on what I said earlier, was it gets worse before it gets better, because my primary coping mechanism was attracting strangers to me so that I could feel better about myself. That was the way I felt better about myself. That was the way I escaped feeling uncomfortable, whether I was fighting or money, whatever it was. And now I've got to deal with, as we say in recovery, life on life's terms. I don't have a place to squiggle and escape and look at porn for 3 hours and then I'm just distracted. Or then I hate myself about that rather than the financial, yes, have taken away a strut that our whole life leaned on. Unfortunately, it was destroying our life. And that has to be replaced, but it isn't replaced right away because the things that we replace it with are more drip by drip things. They're not, I go into intensity, I disappear. It's, I have a good friend. I go to a support group. I go out and have some fun playing tennis. I played with my kid. Those aren't things that are as exciting and intense as acting out, but life should be a drip, drip, drip of fun things, not a waterfall, So yes, in the beginning, it's very, very difficult. And the best way two ways to get through that. One is get as much support as you can, go to as many groups as you can, raise your hand and say, I am so miserable. I hate this process. I hate all of you. Just get it all out. The other thing is, and I have to say this because it's true, one of my sponsors said, the way I got this first 6 months of recovery, I watched movies. She sat there and just distracted herself for enough time to look, when I feel crabby and irritable, I might go watch a show and then I feel better. There's nothing wrong with healthy distractions. It is also a way that that's a way healthy people cope. So there's nothing wrong. It doesn't all have to be journaling and, it can also be just finding something fun to distract you. But yes, from feeling bad. And yes, this is to be expected. And this too shall pass.
And I go for a walk and have to pay attention to something outside, or I have a dog, so I can also go pet my puppy. So, but yeah.
Well, and we call that a walking meditation. When
There
you
you
have to
go.
think to yourself and observe things and you get out of yourself.
Okay, so next question. I'm an SA and have 2 years sobriety. My relationship with my spouse is very strained, of course, and my lack of empathy and feelings of shame and guilt don't help her heal. I've lied, manipulated to her, hide my acting out. We've been separated for 1.5 years. We do talk several times a week, and we've even had a consult with you last week. I want us to work things out, and so does she. However, you told her to shit or get off the pot. So can I learn empathy in your treatment, or would it be I would assume a waste?
I'm sorry. I want to read this again. My relationship with my spouse is very strained. My lack of empathy don't help her heal. Okay, so it's always useful to learn about empathy. And I don't know why your spouse is blaming you at 1.5 years. It could be that you're not doing this, or you're not doing that, or they're still finding out things about you. But if you're really very committed to the recovery process, and really doing well, and you're being more honest and more real and more present, we're not perfect, but they can feel that. I will say this to you spouses, as I would say to this spouse, as I've said to many spouses, there comes a certain point. And by the way, empathy, compassion, yes, you can work on it, you can do that, but you've been separated for 1.5 years. So it's a lot. I'm sure there were moments when you were empathic. I'm sure there were moments when you were kind. I'm sure there were moments when you reflected on you hurt them. So I doubt that you're just black and white. Empathy isn't black and white. However, what I've said to spouses who are still sort of at the same level of hurt and anger and disappointment 1 year in or 1.5 years in. Now, I am all for spouses, and that person who said 3.5 months, no, it's more like 9 months to 1 year before you can expect your spouse to really back down from their anger and disappointment and betrayal. But at 1.5 years, what I often say to spouses is sometimes your anger can be counterproductive to your relationship. Meaning, furious, angry for 6 months, beginning to come to terms at 8 months, working on this in couples therapy, even though we hate each other at 10 months or whatever it is. By 1 year, we pretty much figure whether we're going to go forward or not. When you can start getting on 1.5 years and your spouse is doing this, I want to talk to you a few times a week, but you can't get any closer to me, then I think it's not about her at all. I think it's about you. You are getting better. You are feeling, as you should, more of what you need, because we used to get our needs met out there in the addiction. Now you're more needful. You want to turn to your spouse to get those needs met, and she does not want to do that for you. Is that what you want? How long, if you're doing your best to recover, is there a certain point at which you say, maybe I shouldn't focus so much on this relationship working out because I don't see my partner moving any. And maybe I need to focus my life on what might come next. And boy, you'd be surprised when you stop being the person who's trying to make it work and you start to focus on your life, that will tell the tale. Because either your partner will come racing towards you, and I'm talking about go find a girlfriend. I mean, just simply say to them, you know, I think I'm going to stop pursuing our relationship because I don't see this. I'm tired of looking at the glass half full, and I really need to look at it as half empty so that I can move on. And they will either respond by moving towards you, or you'll know where it's at. But it will only be by you doing what is best for you in these circumstances that you're going to know what to do, not by you're trying to accommodate and accommodate, unless you're still acting out, which is a whole different story. But all the empathy in the world is not going to get back. Your spouse has been apart from you a year and a half.
Okay, next question. I'm wondering why you spent your post-Atlanta statements disowning the, wait, I'm wondering why you spent your post-Atlanta statements disowning the suspect as a sex addict and buying into racism narrative.
Okay, I never said
Yeah,
that. So I never
I
said
was gonna say, I didn't
anything
hear
like
any
that.
of that. Yeah,
Didn't even mention that. So, and I don't want to talk about this. I've already talked about it. I have
yeah.
25 years experience in the field. I think he's a sex addict or not, and he's a crazy person. And crazy trumps sex addict. He could have said, I'm an alcoholic and and I kill people. I'm a gambler and it doesn't matter. He kills people. That comes first. But I don't think, you know, I'm not going to speak on the issues that I'm not an expert in. So I'm not going to talk about race and gender in America. I'm not going to talk. I don't know anything about this guy or what his motivations were. And the you never know what the press says one thing, they said another. So, you know, all I know for sure is that sex addicts who are doing their best or their worst work don't kill people. They hurt people. They let them down. At the worst, some of them abuse emotionally or even physically their partners in a moment of, you know, But you have to understand, to sexually act out or drink or use or gamble when you are angry or upset or disappointed is passive. I'm not coming to you and saying, I'm angry about this and I don't like this and blah, blah, blah. What I'm doing is saying, I'm having all these feelings and I'm not going to show them all to you. I'm just going to disappear into this. So I would say most sex addicts struggle with being assertive. We can take things, but actually asking for them and negotiating, not our best skill set. So no, I don't want to answer any further, but that the issues of the separation between an addiction and someone who's a violent criminal couldn't be more clear in my mind.
And
Wait. Oh, sorry,
go
Tammy.
ahead.
We had a podcast. So Dr. Stephanie Carnes and I did a podcast on this subject, which will be out, I think, tomorrow. So I don't know what our latest is, like number 89 or 93, but if you see Dr. Stephanie Carnes, she and I had a conversation last Friday after all this happened about, are sex addicts violent? What does this mean? And how do these things tie together and all of that? And Sex, Love, and Addiction is the name of the podcast. I'm selling you nothing. We make nothing for podcasts, but 850,000 people have downloaded it, more or less. So Tammy will say 750, I'll say 850. You know, we're along that. But there is a great discussion in the most current episode, which I don't think will be out till Tuesday or Wednesday, about this whole issue. And she and I, we're good friends, and we have a lot to say.
Okay, next question.
Tammy, this is the last question. But I want to say this to you guys. We answered 21 questions. 21, and we only left 2. So I feel good about that.
Well, I'm going to talk. Hi, Rob and Tammy. My husband has identified as a sex and love addict for around 2 years now. We've been married for 2.5 years and together for 9 years. The most recent discovery was this past November, when shortly after finding out we were pregnant with our first child, I discovered extensive online sex and romantic interactions between my husband and 2 previous romantic partners. We were finally able to find a CSAT in our area, and both have been doing individual therapy since January. My husband has ADHD and social anxiety disorder, has been attending his individual therapy weekly and started attending 12-step group weekly. He is very enthusiastic in the first weeks of therapy, and he has been wanting help for this issue for some time now. His mood and communication improved greatly, but now the honeymoon phase seems to be wearing off, and he is finding himself emotionally and mentally exhausted by the recovery work. He doesn't want to give up, but I worry his motivation is waning. Do you have any recommendations for dealing with this kind of slump? What can I do as his wife to encourage him, hold him accountable in an appropriate way without having him feel like I'm taking control of his recovery? I feel like his intimacy issues often leave me in the dark as to how far I can help be supportive of him.
Okay, I wrote a couple of things down.
Please.
One is holding him accountable. It's not your job to hold him accountable. It's my job to hold myself accountable and be accountable to you. So as Tammy said, when people go through treatment, one of the things we do is we make a schedule with them for a week. And we say Monday this group and Tuesday that group and Wednesday this therapy, and we make sure that the week is filled up with stuff. And I don't expect the spouse to say, hey, what are you doing today? This is what I mean. We tell the guys to put that up on the fridge and say, if you have any questions about what I'm doing for recovery, here it is. So I have made myself accountable to you. As far as waning interest, my comment would be welcome to recovery. Just like the person said earlier, it's not a honeymoon. It's more like a long, long road. It's kind of bumpy, and the honeymoon is true. We often get into this place of, oh, I found the answer, and oh, they're not as angry at me anymore, and oh, I know what to do, and we get this excitement and hope, and then we realize what it actually means, and we get depressed because we think, oh my God, this road is so long. I would not confuse feeling irritable and angry and unhappy and struggling and not wanting to look at this with not moving forward. If the person has stopped going to meetings, stopped getting support, stopped getting therapy, that's a problem. But if they're still trudging forward and feeling miserable, I would say good for them, because it gets worse before it gets better. I also would say this last thing. I have a resentment in this particular. I think that I wish that you didn't know that he was exhausted mentally and physically by this work. I wish you didn't know that, because what that tells to me is that you're hearing a little bit, well, this is hard for me and I feel exhausted. And boy, is that not your problem? That's his problem. If he's exhausted, he can get more rest. If he's feeling depleted, he can go for a walk or to get some therapy, or this is not your problem. And what I worry about is addicts who, as you said, their excitement is waning, the bloom is off the rose. And instead of being able to face that and say, I don't like this, I don't want to do this, they turn to you and start whining. And that whining produces for them in their mind some form of empathy from you, which is, oh, that must be exactly what this is. Well, so here's how I read this with all due respect. Poor baby, he's having a really hard time. I mean, this recovery thing, it's difficult. And I love him a lot. And I hate to see him in pain, even though he's completely ruined my life. You're not his mother. It's not how he's feeling at this point is not your responsibility. That's what therapists are for. That's what 12-step meetings are for. He has a lot of support. Let me try it this way. The job of couples in the early stages, like the first 6 months, is not to turn toward each other. You don't trust him. All he wants is forgiveness. You have to turn to outside sources for your support. When he's miserable, he needs to go to his 12-step program. He needs to go to a meeting so he can come home to you with a smile on his face, because you deserve that person to have cleaned up their stuff, especially after what they've put you through, and not still be complaining to you about what they actually should be doing. If I had diabetes and I complained to you every time I had to take my blood, and how would you feel about that? It's just something I have to do. What's the point in complaining about it? It's on this person to take responsibility for their feelings and not put them on you. And with that, I will say, thank you, Tami. It's always a good time when we get to work together for me.
Agree. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Lots more on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Join the drop-in groups and other things.
And those of you who are seeking integrity, I'm going to come in and run your group tomorrow. So I'll see you in the afternoon.
There you go. You'll see them. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye for now. See you guys.